I have with me today the former head of digital transformation of Nike. Different than what you think, he didn't have a straight trajectory in his career. He explains to us how it happened and what is the value of transformation and why it is so hard. I have with me today Greg Merrill, who is also a global citizen and has a lot to share with us about the future of retail. Here's Paula Macadi, and this is episode 53 of my show. Welcome to OFFBounds. Greg, welcome to OFFBounds. Welcome to this amazing studio here in New York. We spent, 4 days together, seeing each other every day. So.
We did, and I don't know if we're coming off of the high or if we're exhausted from NRF this year.
Absolutely, NRF is always exhausting. I'm always like that, like drained by the end, but it's about connections, and I think I made many like yourself.
I did, yeah. Folks from all over the world. And what surprised me actually was the folks that come in that don't even participate in NRF, but they're here for all of the extracurricular, extraneous events and parties and things around the NRF. So it's clearly a central mass of activity.
Yeah, I kind of participate on both parts. Lots of events and lots of at the conference. Yeah. And you announced that now you have a podcast, which is super exciting. How is that for you? How is that being a host?
It's been fun, I would say. It's been interesting. It's been a bit of a learning curve. Over the last couple of years, I've been saying yes to be a guest on a lot more podcasts. And now we're about to launch The Retail Alchemist as a new podcast focused on retail. And it's essentially about the art and the science of retail. And while we know we love to quantify ROI and make sure we're working with the best technology and focused on data, the reality is in the retail space, there's a lot of the art or the magic of how things happen, where things went right or wrong. And many times those insights can only be passed down with stories of the survivors, the people that were on the front line sort of doing these things. And so the Retail Alchemist is meant to bring those stories to life so that others can, learn from and be inspired by that.
And do you finish with a recipe?
We do, exactly. Yeah, the goal is walk away with a recipe, from The Alchemist. Deborah Langley's my co-host on that podcast. And, we want folks to walk away with a tangible, great, you just told me some cool stuff and I'm inspired, but now what can I do with that? So yeah, the recipe is part of a tactical walk away tear sheet that now you can hopefully do something better with that.
I can't wait to listen to that. I'll be an avid listener.
Thank you.
Sure. So our guests get very acquainted with you.
Mm-hmm.
You had a very interesting journey in your life. You've worn many hats, and eventually you became the head of digital transformation at Nike.
Yeah. Tell
us a little bit about yourself.
I'll start with my early fascination is with the human condition. And I studied kinesiology in undergrad, and I was always curious about how the human mind and body works. And so I mention that because it'll be a steel thread that we talk about. So I went back to school later. I worked in the health and fitness industry, went back, got my MBA, and thought, okay, I'm going Big Four consulting. That's sort of what you did. This is, almost 20 years ago now. And I stumbled into entrepreneurial mode and ended up co-founding a few companies in the technology development and licensing space, chemistry technology, not the type of technology we talk about a lot at NRF. And it was in the sustainability space. Moving forward, Nike was one of the partners that I worked with in my second startup. Unexpectedly turned into, working full-time at Nike for over 8 years. And I stepped away last year to focus on building my own business, which is what I'm doing now, serving on boards and strategic advisory to CEOs and executives that are navigating growth and change in their business. And so now my goal is, how can I help others do some of the work that I have the battle scars from having learned it from doing it right and wrong in many cases. So
absolutely. How many people can say that they have transformation in the titles? So I'm curious, and it's so easy for us. Like I think I have several episodes in the podcast in our first season that we talk about digital transformation. That they usually mean changing from legacy to more modern technologies and things like that. But I think transformation is a lot broader. And it's always easy to say companies have to innovate, companies have to often transform. But what does someone that has transformation in the title does?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because yes, a lot of people look at transformation and technology as very closely related and in many cases synonymous. And I don't. In fact, I would put transformation in the people side of the business. And well, people run your business, so it touches everything, technology included. But the way my role of digital transformation was structured was, if you think about the way a business operates, in this case, Nike, there's sort of this economic engine, all of the things that a company does to create value, right? In this case, we make shoes and shirts and, all sorts of other things. But when you look at all the inventory planning and allocation and marketing and product design and creation, these are all part of the value chain. And so how do you transform the way that engine works to create value in new and different ways to do something different? In many cases, to grow, to make more money, to be more nimble, to be more agile. The one thing I'll talk about is technology as an aspect of the transformation. It's to do things different and better, right? And so the last thing I'll mention, within my role, it was looking across that whole economic engine and saying, where can we do things different and better, plug in new technologies, plug in new processes, and teach people to do their jobs in new and better ways.
Sounds very fun, actually. I think that like you probably have an overview of everything that happens in the company, so you can
Well, one of the benefits of that is you do touch the whole company, so you get really deep into how these businesses operate. So if you talk to people at any company that are in transformation, the chances are high that they know detail about how that business works, and they become more valuable, right? They have that institutional knowledge. But the hard part, and I know we'll get into this a bit later, is with transformation is about change, and change is about people learning new things and using tools and technologies in different ways. That is very hard to do. Human nature, going back to my earlier point, we are resistant to change. It's true. It happens. It happens to the best of us. Even if we think of ourselves as risk takers and innovators, we can be resistant to change. And so driving transformation, especially in big companies, is about how do you change people at the individual, organizational, and in all facets of that.
That is funny. In a much like a super smaller scale, I think about my business when I talk about transformation with all these leaders, right?
Yeah.
I always think like, oh, I can't wait to figure this out. And then I think that I'll never figure this out, like given what the leaders are saying, right? Like how I built my business.
Yeah.
That we are like, I don't know, 10 people that touch each episode. Like, it's still like, how can we make the process better? But also, what's next? Is this everything that we're going to do? We have to change. And I see retailers having to do that. But like, it's so much more complex because you have a lot of silos, a lot of processes, a lot of people.
The bigger the company, the harder it is to change because there's so many pieces that have to fit together. That's absolutely true. And to your point earlier, there's a saying at Nike, it's one of the kind of company principles or maxims, that there is no finish line. And I think that's true for most companies, and certainly with transformation, you're never done. There is no finish line, right? Because even if you're saying, hey, we're going down a 2 or 3 year transformational journey to do this big project, and it's going to change the way we do inventory planning and demand planning and things like that. Well, by the time you get done with that 2 or 3 years later, guess what? There's new technology available. The consumer has changed. The market has changed. The world has changed around you. So you now need to change again. So it's like, well, that was one transformation done. Now we're starting a new one. So it's actually more about learning to live in the balance of, okay, we're slightly behind. Now we're ahead for a little bit and we're behind again. And let's catch up. And again, it's really hard to do that in really big companies. Not impossible, but it's a tough job.
I bet. I bet. If it was easy, we wouldn't have
we wouldn't
roles
be here.
For that,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
We just put an AI that would do that by itself if we didn't have to think.
Yes.
But I'm more curious about this role. I imagine like, okay, you have one process in one specific area of the business that you think could be better, but you have no idea if there is a better way, if there's a new technology that like, what comes first, the demand of we need a technology that does that, or there's this technology, oh my God, it's going to solve that problem.
Yeah. What I hear from you is almost like, what's the anchor? What's the foundation? Where does it begin? And this is, if you go on my website, actually, I'm a nerd about this because it's to get bigger, we must first get better is something that I talk about. What does that mean? How do we get better? It's focusing on the business fundamentals. And I'll start with the most basic one. In the work I do, I'll meet with the CEO and say, tell me your business strategy. I'm not talking technology. I'm not talking how you're transforming. Just what is your business strategy? And usually it's a hard thing. Well, we're focused on this. We have some goals and some priorities and we're struggling here. It's like, but you didn't really tell me in like 10, 30 seconds or less, what is your business strategy? And so that's actually where I would start because that's part of this foundational element upon which all decisions should be made, including what technology should we be using? What geographies should we be going after? What products do we need to think about bringing to the market, right? In Nike's case, shoes and shirts. But it all has to start from somewhere. So what are your anchors, the principles of the company, your business strategy, who your brand is, right? I talk about brand as what you want people to feel after they've experienced you. So for Nike, when somebody has walked into a Nike store and they walk out, how do we want them to feel? That's part of the brand experience. And so if you use the brand as part of your anchor, then how do you put technologies in place that will allow you as a company to serve those brand experiences in a consistent way? So again, it's really focusing on the foundation. It's even like going back to fitness, right? You start at the core. Right? With a strong core around your midsection, then everything else becomes stronger. So really getting good fundamentals and foundation aspects of the business, then you're more prepared to take on the hard jobs.
Funny that you mentioned fitness. I love talking about sports and business. I think it's so similar.
Yeah, it is. Especially team sports, right? Where, you have individuals that are different people and they have different ideas and perspectives and motivations and things that they care about or not. And so, having a strong mission and vision, this is now back. What is the rallying cry for our company? What is our sort of reason for existence? And how do you make sure all the employees can rally around that so that they show up to work ready to work together and tackle the hard problems? That's team sports.
Absolutely. And one thing that you mentioned that I think is super, I will mention, like when I talked to a CEO, he joined the company to do the turnaround of a large group.
Yeah.
And he said, when I arrived, I asked, what were the goals? Each person had 4 goals in their mind. So they were putting every project, they were listing every project that they were working on. And they were 500.
Yeah.
When he got to 500, he's like, no. Let's have 20. The whole company
even that's too many.
Yeah.
Even that's too many,
Yeah. So I think to your point, is more on the prioritize where you want to get, because I think there's opportunity everywhere. Where do you want to get, right?
Well, and so if you take that, and I'm, whether it's 500 or 20, I think 3, right? At any given time, there's only so much ability for individuals and organizations to focus on different things at one time. So 3 is probably a good number, even if you're a massive company. But then the question is, well, how do you craft those 3 priorities in a way that they sequence down and that eventually everybody in the entire company can say, I understand my job, exactly how it fits into at least one of those 3 priorities, right? Everybody must see themselves in that. And if they can't, then you have to recraft those priorities so that everybody is sort of represented, if you will, and can see how their day-to-day touches the bigger vision.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of companies that died, companies that we thought they were too big to die.
Yeah.
And do you think there's a way building a culture of transformation in companies that are already too consolidated?
I do. And this is a concept that I love to talk about because, you have to do the mental gymnastics.
I can see your eyes.
You ready? Here it comes. So it's a concept of ambidexterity. And you're typically at the human level, you are right-handed or you're left-handed. Not many people are equally capable with both right and left hand. For organizations, it's the same. You're either really good, not left and right hand organization, but at running the day-to-day operation, putting out fires, running an efficient organization and operation, and creating the future or innovating for the future, whether it be for your company or your industry. It's really hard to do both because the skill sets, both individual and organizationally, that are required for both of those are different. They're different. Even I'll take one thing, your appetite for risk. Okay, over here, you're innovating for the future. You better have a high tolerance for risk. You better embrace failure. You're down here running the day-to-day operations. We're trying to cut costs or manage costs and improve efficiencies. And you're looking to squeeze small drops of juice out of your day-to-day and just constant minor improvements. Those are two completely different sets of activities.
It's like the urgent stuff and the important stuff. Oh.
It's a blend. It's a blend, right? And so I think organizations that do it really, really well, and I don't know that I have a lot of examples. I wish I did, but that's the work for the strong executives out there, is make your organization ambidextrous. And I think it's 50-50 in terms of how you allocate your time and your resources and whatnot. So when you hear about companies cutting budgets, cutting innovation teams, doing layoffs and things like that, well, first of all, I've never seen a company cut their way to growth, either their budgets or their people. So if that's what's going on, you're over here in mitigate risk and kind of create some operational efficiencies, not we're exploring for the future. So I really think, and I know it's a bold thing to say, companies should spend 50% of their time and their resources, their budget, their people on creating for what's next. But those are the companies that are going to be around in 10 and 20 years. There was a data point to share maybe. This was a little bit outdated. We're in 2025 now. This was 2024. In 2024, of the companies on the S&P 500, the number of those that were on it 20 years before, so in 2004, which is not that long ago, was only 68. So 432 companies that were on the S&P 500 in 2004 were no longer on it in 2024. So what does that tell you? A lot of companies are struggling. A lot of companies not necessarily have died, but have suffered enough to fall off of that S&P 500. That's one way to look at that data. And to me, that says those companies were not very good at being ambidextrous and to innovate for the future, to stay on that list if that was a priority for them.
I think two companies that we talked a lot about last year between my friends, between my circle, is Starbucks and Nike.
Yeah.
Nike has been struggling, and I don't know, I take Nike in my heart because I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'm a consumer. I'm
Me
a
too.
fan.
Yeah.
I believe in the brand. I've read Shoe Dog. I read Emotion by Design. I recommend this book to everyone. So I deeply love the brand and believe in the brand. But from your perspective, from someone that was inside, what do you think led to this struggle?
Yeah, obviously there's many, many things that I think play into this. And there's so many folks out there that have opinions. Yes, Nike struggled for a couple of years, many different reasons to that. And we'll talk about a couple of them. But for me, like when you just look at the stock price, that alone is just enough. That's painful because Nike is an iconic brand and it has played such an important role in so many aspects of culture for so long. To see it in pain like this, just kind of breaks my heart. I'm rooting for the company to turn around and do better, even though I'm not part of the team today, kind of helping lead that charge. But, hindsight's always 20/20. I think one thing that is changing that I think Nike will have to wrap their arms around is their role in culture. Forever, Nike was at the forefront of culture, certainly as it related to sports and fitness and athletics. What's changing now is consumer preferences. Brand loyalty is eroding. The way that consumers shop, search for products, and decide what to buy and wear is changing. And I think Nike is almost kind of taking a backseat to culture creation now. And they're going to have to come to terms with that and be okay with that. They're no longer creating the culture in a big way, but they can participate in these communities where culture is being cultivated and created. They can and they need to participate in that. One example, non-Nike, that I think you were at this event with Dyson, where there's this massive community on TikTok of these young women that are now using the Dyson hair products to get the Dyson look. And this is not happening. Dyson's not in control of this. They're not leading this. This is organically happening. But what now Dyson is doing is choosing to opt into that community and participating, right? So they'll go in and they'll comment and they'll share and they'll talk and this and that. So Dyson, in this case, while it's a corporation, it's a company, they are participating in this TikTok community that has kind of rallied around in some way their products.
It's like,
so,
hey, do you want to hang out with each other? Let me facilitate this.
Yeah.
Right?
Or I'm just a member of the party. I'm not hosting the party.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't my party. So again, it's a tough thing to think about for a company, an iconic brand that has for so long been at the forefront, been leading the charge here. I think their role is going to be different going forward. And I think that's kind of hard to come to terms with. Anyway, these are all my opinions. Somebody might completely disagree with me, but that's what I see going on right now.
And Greg, you are very insightful, of course. That's why I invited you. I just need insightful people.
Made the cut. Yay.
No, yeah, these last 4 days that we've been seeing each other, talking to each other, like I'm very happy that my audience is able to listen to your ideas. There's one thing about you that I relate, is that you're very global, right? Like you have lived a multicultural existence, let's say. Do you think that helped you as a professional, as get where you are? Absolutely.
And maybe just to elaborate, I was very fortunate to sort of grow up in a military family. My father wanted to become a doctor. And so back in the 70s, you joined the Navy and they paid for you to go to school. And so we ended up moving around quite a bit growing up. I remember at the time hating it, but now I look back and I appreciate my ability to drop into new situations and make friends, right? And kind of connect with folks. We lived in southern Spain, El Puerto de Santa Maria, for my sort of middle school going into high school years, and then came back to the US after that. But also growing up with my Mexican family in San Miguel Allende and spending time down there. So I have had the privilege and the benefit of being around different cultures. My wife's from Mexico City. My girls are Mexican Americans, and me too, Mexican Americans. So that has helped from very early stages, just appreciate the differences in life. And I think where it's helped me professionally is honestly just being able to connect with people no matter what, right? Transcending cultures and language and everything in between. When you can relate to people, you have the ability to collaborate, to work better with different styles and types of people. And the bigger I think about this, the bigger your toolbox of influence is directly related to your ability to connect with others. So I think, having more of a global, and certainly I've traveled the world all over for my professional experiences, a lot of time in Asia, a lot of time in Europe. So
I think one of the things that being global adds up to your equation, your recipe or alchemy.
Yeah. I like that. There you go.
Is I think like you can see trends happening, right? Sometimes faster in some regions, some faster in different communities.
Yes.
Do you think, I'm sure there are many trends happening at the moment that brands are having to adapt and transform eventually to follow. What are those that you were saying?
Absolutely. So one, and we were both at NRF APAC in Singapore last year. And one of the things that was so eye-opening to me, which sort of served as the foundation for one of my predictions for 2025, was social commerce kind of going more global. What was insane to see is that the data and the statistics around social commerce that's already happening in the Southeast Asian countries. And I was seeing examples of mothers and grandmothers in their 60s and 70s that are just very seamlessly, they're just shopping on, on social commerce and it's just part of the way they're doing it already. Yeah, it's happening in the US to a smaller regard, but I think that's going to pick up much more in the US. So one of the trends will be social commerce. The lines are blurring between, commerce and entertainment and sports and the future of all content being shoppable in the future is not that far away. So for all you tech providers out there, this is a big area. One of the other things we talked a lot about was communities in terms of, cultures, the culture creating aspect and the role that communities play, even tying back to my earlier answer about the role Nike will play. So I think we're shifting away from looking at consumers by demographic segmentation and looking more at psychographic and behavioral segmentation, because you're now seeing behavior, 80-year-old women to 20-year-old women that are now sort of behaving in similar ways online and finding shared alignment around their values and their interests and what they shop for and what they like. So the dimensions of human complexity as it relates to communities and commerce, it's mind-blowing. I think the best thing companies could actually do right now is go and hire a behavioral psychologist and say, you're on staff, help us understand the way that consumers think and behave and how we need to respond to that from our business.
Yeah, I agree. And it changes so fast. I think the demand and the way they engage and the trends. Sometimes they post something like, "Oh, nice! I'm participating of this trend on social channels." It's very cool.
Yeah, exactly. And the tricky thing there and I know we talk about retail and brands and apparel, and when you look at physical product being brought to market, especially footwear and apparel, the timelines, the life cycle is very long, right? To come up with an idea and do all your product creation, innovation, development, and bring it to market, it's a very long timeline. The consumers expect much, much quicker than that. So that speed balancing is really challenging. And I think the whole industry, to be honest, is just ripe for somebody burning it down and saying, we're starting over from the ground up, and we're solving for something different than we were before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Greg, who has inspired you? I'm sure a lot of people has. A lot of people have, but one person that you could name and say, this leader has definitely inspired me.
One leadership trait that I put very, very high, sort of on the top 3, is authenticity. And to me, the question I ask around authenticity is, do I believe what this person is saying? And do I believe that they believe what they're saying? And those are two different questions. It has to be yes to both of those. And so one of the most authentic leaders that I've come in contact with, and then I get to kind of admire from a distance, is Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. And I've never worked at Microsoft. I have a lot of friends there, and in fact, one of the boards that I sit on, another board member is a senior exec at Microsoft. So I have connectivity into Microsoft but can admire from a distance. And what's that saying? You should never meet your heroes. So, nobody's perfect, right? But from my position, I think Satya is just not only incredibly brilliant, but very authentic and engaging and deeply rooted in his humanity. And I think that comes across whenever he opens his mouth, even if he's talking about technology and digital products and whatnot. And I think that comes across when you look at, over the last couple of decades, Microsoft's ongoing consistent success, ability to stay a step ahead, even though they're a massive company.
Shareholders are definitely happy.
They're happy. And I think a lot of that is attributed to his leadership style and people not leaving the company saying, I want to work for this guy.
Have you read Hit Refresh?
Yes, I have. Yeah, his book.
Yeah.
His book. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I thought you were going to go Shoe Dog with Phil Knight's book.
No,
that's a good book too.
Good. It's a very good one. Yeah, I can talk about.
We got to plug both books. We got to do both.
Very good. I admire him as well. So glad you brought him up.
Yeah.
You are the father of 3 girls.
I am. Girl dad. It's part of my brand. I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to bring it up. I don't go anywhere without talking about it.
Yeah. How that shaped your leadership? I'm curious, as you like to bring that out so much.
Yeah.
How old are they?
Let's see, 7, 10, and 12.
Okay.
Yeah. And they are full of life and smart and creative and pressure testing the world around them. And it's, as a guy who's like, as a dad who, wants to balance letting them grow and change and explore, but also protecting them. It's like, what's the right balance? I don't know. I think having kids helps you grow in ways that you never realized you could or should or needed to. And I think that has helped for me just be a better leader in my professional career. I have more patience. I have more empathy. I've always considered empathy also kind of a top leadership trait.
And as someone that like psychology, I'm sure you're seeing some behavior change between generations too, just by observing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, being a girl dad has helped me be very patient and sort of just meet people where they are, which really I think is the foundation of empathy, is meet people where they are. And I hope that translates to, people that work for me and that I work with. They can see, like working with Greg,
Yeah.
So.
And well, they'll soon be at the time that they'll go build their career, they'll go study, build their career, build their own character, learn from being there, right? What would be the advice you give to them and to any young professional that is starting now in their career journey?
I think this will be maybe just certainly to them, and it's part of our family values, but honestly, it's sometimes the adults need this reminder more than kids, and it's be curious and coachable. And curiosity is aligned directly with having a growth mindset. Actually, going back to Satya, he says, be a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all, right? And when you can keep an open attitude and perspective on things, then things will come in and you will learn what you need when you need it. This is also the perspective I take on living at the silver lining in the life, is always look for the lesson to be learned with anything. So the more curious you are, the more I think you'll get out of things, and it stops you from making assumptions, which we know that's a bad thing to do. And then the coachability part comes on the back end is, are you open to influence and are you open to change? It's maybe the opposite of being stubborn, but we can all do things different and better. And so once you know better, you do better. So being curious and coachable, I think, are two really good traits that go hand in hand. And in fact, the work that I do now, and part of the reason why I chose to focus on building my independent practice, is I really wanted to prioritize working with people that were curious and coachable, because there's an undertone of coaching that I do, helping senior executives not only grow individually, but help their companies grow. At the end, it's not just coaching. That's not how I talk about myself, but it is that being coachable allows you to grow and build your company in bigger and better ways.
That's the first time. Curiosity we get all the time.
Okay.
Coachable, that was the first. I'll take the note. Let's see how many times it's going to show in 2025. And one thing that I've been learning more and more is that a life, it's about many trade-offs. Sometimes you have to renounce on stuff to focus on others. What have you renounced to be where you are today?
Not much. And I'll explain that. I think early on, I've always been a very values-based individual. And while it's taken some time to refine my values, or they kind of change over the time, certainly when I became a father, when you can be very secure and understand what your foundation is, then you just have to do the work to be consistent, to make decisions based on that foundation. For me, and we talked about this, I'm a girl dad. Being a dad is an important part of who I am. It's something that is a guiding light for me. It's one of those foundational things that I base my decisions on. And I want to be proud in 10, 20, 30 years to look back on my life and my career and talk to my daughters and say, I'm very proud. I want not only for me to feel proud, I want them to feel proud of me for the decisions I made and the things that I did and the people that I've helped. And I always talk about look for the helpers. And so that's why now I'm dedicating myself to helping others. So one example I will give you of where I had to make an important decision is not just recently kind of stepping away from Nike to focus on my own practice. Actually, it was before that, joining Nike. So it's kind of on two edges. As a company founder beforehand, I was on the road so much.
I can relate.
You know, I was living in Austin, Texas at the time, and I was probably gone many times, 80% of the time. And I couldn't be a family man. I couldn't be a dad. I couldn't play the role that I wanted to if I was not physically there to be a role model and a caretaker. And so for me, joining Nike helped me kind of get a little bit more stable. I thought I was going to travel less. I ended up traveling quite a bit with Nike, but I was able to be home more and be home for dinner and sort of create boundaries and limitations to say, being a dad is an important part of who I am, and work, there's always a balance and a give and take, but I would create space to be a dad.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Greg, thank you so much for joining me in this beautiful studio here in New York. Next time I see you, probably will be in another event.
Yep.
Yeah, I probably in Mexico or Brazil. We were talking about this possibility.
Or Singapore.
Singapore will definitely be there. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pablo.